Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 9. Um, this presentation should be pretty short, but let me just introduce to you what I'm hoping to achieve here. Last week in class, as we were talking about different theories in the readings, I introduced to you the concepts of correspondence theories, as well as coherence theories, and then finally critical theories. And so I wanted to build on that a little bit by giving you an overview of uh, some of the theories we've been reading about this semester, and also in light of the reading that you did by Pinar in the book this week. I'd like to help you think about how some of these theories might be labeled, sort of as he does, like traditional and a reconceptualist over time. And I'd also like to trouble that a little bit. Um, One of the things I think somebody asked me last week, where I'd gotten the idea for the whole correspondence versus coherence theory ideas, and those two ideas come from the following book. Let's see if I can get this slide to forward. There we go. You should see right next to me an image of a book called Engaging Minds. The authors are Brent Davis, Dennis Samara, and Rebecca Luce Kapler. This is a pretty cool book, and it's one that I would really strongly recommend for those of you who are interested in exploring some of these ideas further. They go over theories of knowing, one other category. I have the book in front of me here. Let me see if I can. Theories of knowing, and knowing acts and knowing structures, theories of learning, including learning frames, learning positions, learning minds, etc. And then the third part of the book is focusing on teaching, and they talk about teaching frames, teaching challenges, teaching conditions, and teaching encounters. And as part of this, what they do is they differentiate between correspondence theories, and again, those are ones that would align with what Pinar terms traditional curriculum theories. But theories like behaviorism, in which the expectation is that there is a correspondence between what what a learner says or does, and what the teacher's or text expectation is. So what is in the mind or in the learner corresponds exactly with what's in the text or what's on the page or a certain standard. Whereas with coherence theories, those are a little bit more interpretivist and would go along with what Pinar talked about as reconceptualist theories of curriculum. So Davis and Samara and Luce Kapler talk about those and introduce those concepts. What they don't really do is differentiate between critical theories. So what I'm hoping to do in what comes next is to offer you a view of traditionalist and reconceptualist theories, as well as critical theories, and then how all of these things relate to both curricular models, instructional strategies or approaches that you might see in the classroom, as well as epistemologies of teaching and learning. Okay, so you should no longer be seeing me, but you should be seeing what looks like a big colorful chart with 4 different columns and 4 different rows. And I'm actually going to just talk in general about what this is, and then after that, I'm going to back up and talk about what I mean by epistemologies, theories and theorists, curricular approaches and models, and instructional strategies. So this is really meant to be, it actually looks more categorical than I intend it to. In other words, it looks like there's one box and then another box and another box and another box. Really, this should be viewed in a more fluid fashion. And I have things in some boxes, and other people might decide that, well, no, that really ought to be, atoms, for example, ought to be in a different box. So take the structure that you see here with a slight grain of salt. But what I'm trying to do here is sort of show you where theories and theorists, some of the people that we've explored this semester, how they're situated in relation to epistemologies, as well as specific curricular models and approaches, some of which you may be exploring in your seminar paper, as well as instructional strategies, the kinds of things that teachers do in classrooms. So this is meant to represent for each epistemological tradition a continuum from a broad philosophical area down to a very practical nitty-gritty level. So I'm going to actually navigate away from this to talk about what I mean by each of these concepts at the top of the screen, and then I'm going to come back to this. So let's see if I can, oh, come on, let's see. There, oh, no, there we go. All right, so an epistemology is, again, sort of a more philosophical level of thought. An epistemology really refers to a branch of philosophy, and it's focused on the nature of knowing and how people come to know. And so some terms that are in an epistemological column that I have on that big chart are maybe familiar to you. Empirical rationalist, constructivist, that might be a familiar term to you. And then when we go sort of at a slightly more concrete level, but still talking pretty abstractly, we have theories. And again, this is a class on contemporary curriculum theory, so probably a good thing to know. And I know that we talked a little bit about the beginning of the semester, at the beginning of the semester, about what is a theory and what we mean by that. I think one of the things that we came up with was that theories are explanatory systems. They're ways of explaining phenomena that happen in the world. And that's similar to the definition that you see here on the screen. Theory is propositional networks or systems that can help us understand, explain, and predict processes or concepts in a specific field, such as curriculum or teaching and learning. Then if we go toward yet another level of concreteness, we get curricular models. These might be called curricula or instructional models. Sometimes people even refer to these as theoretical models, but here what I really mean is a representation of potential practices as informed by a particular theory or set of theories. So reading, writing workshops, Singapore math, 5-paragraph essay, and other kinds of highly structured formulaic approaches to writing. Those all would be considered curricular models. And there are many others. And then at a final level of abstraction are instructional strategies. And these are actually the techniques, the things that teachers will do in classrooms to engage students, develop key understandings, initiate conversations, assess students' progress, yada, yada, yada. And I actually have another thing on this slide here that I wanted to highlight with you, and that is praxis. Praxis is something that really is meant to get at the integration of theory and practice. And Bell Hooks talks about praxis at the very end of chapter 5, and that's that feeling that where in some ways where you could say that theory has really become of use in the practical world to her. And so it really is, to me, praxis gets at that moment of theory coming to life in the classroom or in a research project. So with all of these things in mind, let's go back to the chart on the chart that I showed you a minute ago. So here we are back at the chart. So you can see we've got epistemologies all the way to the more practical instructional strategies. So one of the things I wanted to point out to you when we were talking about correspondence theories last week in class, those would be associated very much with radical empiricism and positivism. And I know some of you guys who are concurrently in 501 have recently been talking about some of these paradigms of research. And so we can think about these epistemologies as very similar to research paradigms. Maybe that's helpful to you. So, behaviorism and the readings of Popham and Bobbitt and the work of Thorndike would all be consistent with what Pienaar considers traditionalist curricular theories and what who are the, oh, Davis, Samara, and Luz Kapler would consider to be correspondence theories. And you can see some of the curricular models and approaches and instructional strategies that we might associate with those theories. We might also put in here, in terms of curricular design, the way that Popham talks about writing curricular objectives or instructional objectives. When we jump into coherence theories, we're really looking at these two, the green and the pink um, lines of thought. So we're looking at post-positivism, pragmatism, and constructivism. And when we're thinking, and same thing with interpretivism and social constructivism. What's interesting here is, as I was putting this together, I was trying to think about Pienaar's ideas, and I guess I was thinking about these ones in green here as being really aligned with both traditionalist and reconceptualist approaches to curriculum. And I say that because, things like schema theory and constructivist theories have often been taken up in ways that are a little bit more regimented, and less, oh gosh, how should I say that? Less Eisner-esque, to think of one way to phrase it, in more cut and dried ways. So I really see these theories as it sort of depends. They might be taken up in more traditionalist ways, and they might be taken up in more reconceptualist ways. And I think my own uncertainties in this regard is one reason that I have arrows that go both ways here. That it's not just about saying, oh, there's this epistemology and they're associated with these theories, but you might really talk about certain instructional practices and curricula and theories that might really animate different epistemologies of learning. So, as I said, you should view this chart in a very I guess you should view these boxes as having pretty fuzzy boundaries. And again, somebody else might put some of these thinkers in boxes that I didn't put them in. So, and again, once you get to sociocultural theories and interpretivist and social constructivist paradigms, I'm really connecting those to Pienaar's ideas of reconceptualist curricular theories. And you can see I've put some of the people whose works we've read this semester into this box here, and you might align it with these curricular models as well as a bunch of others. I think that when Pienaar is talking about reconceptualist theories, I get the sense that he's putting critical social science in with those. But a lot of other people who write about theories and epistemologies of teaching, learning, and curriculum would really put critical social science and post-structuralist thought, including critical race theory, Black feminism, critical pedagogy, the readings of Woods and Lads and Billings, Ferry, Hooks, etc., into a different category. And that's why, when I was talking about this stuff last week, and I talked about correspondence theories and coherence theories, I talked about how critical theories and critical social science might be considered its own category because they really push us to social action and not just interpretivist understandings of the world. Now, William, I know what you're thinking. You're seeing Lads and Billings here, and you're also seeing Lads and Billings here. And I actually did this for a reason. I did this because I felt like in Lads and Billings' earlier work, or with her work specifically with culturally relevant pedagogy, I wasn't convinced that she was really pushing us to social action. That said, when she writes about critical race theory, I tend to see her a little bit more in this critical camp and pushing toward social and systemic change. But I actually was thinking about you when I put Lads and Billings in both of these categories. So again, another indication of how this whole conceptual scheme here should really be viewed as having some pretty fluffy boundaries. Um, so I'm going to move now into another slide where actually before I do that, um, note how I put hooks down here. Um, and some of the things that Hooks talks about in chapter 5 are concepts that we've actually been talking about all semester, whereby certain theorists have been ignored over time, and in particular, Black feminists and African American thinkers, and this harkens back to the book that we've been reading. That includes the work of Woodson and Cooper and Alan Locke, etc. And so I guess one of the things that this has caused me to question, and this is something that I'll probably ask you guys to write about in forums and to think a little bit about, but if that's the case, that we have in the field have tended to ignore African American thinkers and other scholars of color, and also many women. What does this do to Pinar's notion of both traditionalist curricular theories and reconceptualist? Um, I wonder, for example, if if people like Woodson and Cooper and others that we've read about, if their work really is not all that dissimilar to the work of Ladson Billings and Hooks and Frary and others who we would consider more modern curriculum theorists, why does that disrupt that dualism between traditionalist as being stuff before 1960? I think that's what Pinar said, and reconceptualist. In other words, maybe there were people who we would categorize as reconceptualist who were doing work way back when, well before 1960. So it's something that I've been thinking about, and I think would be an interesting thing for us to discuss in our forums. So, okay, now I'm going to go on to my next slide. All right, so I wanted to switch gears just a little bit and go back to this poem that we read of Marge Piercy at the beginning of the semester. Successfully zoomed out that frame, but here's Marge Piercy's poem again. The people I love the best jump into work head first, without dallying in the shadows, and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black sleek heads of seals, bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn, are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. So let's go back to thinking about the usefulness of theory. Um, One of the things that I appreciate about Bell Hooks is her thinking about theory in a way that is a a a place of respite for her to rethink the world. And I guess I view that as a useful space. Um, that said, I think that a lot of doctoral students often struggle with the concept of how to animate theory and put theory to use in their dissertation work. And so I'm going to end this presentation here, but your next activity is meant to explicitly explore the notion of theory in doctoral work. And what I would like you to do as you're thinking about this is to think about the chart that I showed you and all of those relationships, particularly as related to your seminar project, because you might be able to draw some lines between epistemologies, theories, and those curricular approaches, but also be thinking about to what extent curriculum theories, the theories we've explored this semester, are useful to you as you go about inquiring about, specific problems in the field of teaching and learning, and inquiring about teaching and learning, and inquiring about curriculum. In what ways does your theoretical frame help you think about or wrap your brain around certain instructional problems? Or in what ways might the way that you're thinking about curriculum and thinking about instruction, that is, in what ways might your theoretical frames actually limit how you craft research questions and understand research in the field of curriculum learning and teaching? The readings that I'm going to send you toward in the next activity in this week's asynchronous class are intended to help you consider some of those questions. So I hope that you find it, well, of use. See you.